All right, welcome to Rising Misfits. Today's episode is a very heartfelt episode. We're talking about Black Lives Matter. All right, so my name is Nali Barfield. This is
Latoya Sample.
And today, guest, we have Trevor. Trevor, tell us a little about yourself. Who are you?
My name is Trevor Darrell. I am a manager of projects at the finest utility company in America, Con Ed, and just living a life in Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter. All right, so before we actually go into anything, one thing I want to get out of the way is actually talk about what is Black Lives Matter. So I feel like there's a lot of discrepancies of what it actually is. So I just want to do a quick little reading on their website, focusing on their About page. So once again, this is on blacklivesmatter.com. Their About page is the Black Lives Matter Global Network is a chapter-based, member-led organization whose mission is to build local power and to intervene in violence inflicted on Black communities by the state and vigilantes. We are expansive. We are a collective of liberators who believe in an inclusion and spacious movement. We also believe that in order to win and bring as many people with us along the way, we must move beyond narrow nationalism that is all to prevent in Black communities. We must ensure we are building a movement that brings us all to the front. And it goes on to talk about who they serve and stuff like that. So that's a brief synopsis of who Black Lives Matter. Now, one thing I want to talk about is, importantly, as Christians, should we as Christians participate in the movement Black Lives Matter? First question off the bat. This is not a yes or no question. We can actually talk about it now. So I go first? Yeah? Yeah.
Woo!
All right, cool. So, I'm going to say yes. We should participate in it. People have a sense in a butt, but I don't
say it.
There's no but yet. So, but the reason why I say yes, we should participate in Black Lives Matter is as Black people and Black Christians and Black members of the church, it is still something that's dear to us as a people and as a race. And there's a lot of injustices that's still going on in society, whether you're a Christian or not, that still take place. Now, one thing we have to be careful as Christians is knowing our role as Christians first, and then participating in Black Lives Matter. Because there's some parts of the movement of Black Lives Matter that may not actually line up with the Christian walk, or the Christian faith, which is what I want to talk about a little bit later. So what are you guys' opinion on that first? Should we participate?
I think it ain't killing nobody to be a Christian. It ain't killing nobody to be a Christian and to stand for Black Lives Matter. So I'm going to say yes. I'll explain my stance later, but yes.
Me, I'm gonna say yes, but there's but I think as a Christian, I think you are supposed to, stand up against evil and fight for what's right. So in that sense, I do believe that, standing up for those that cannot defend themselves over, decades of slavery and a plethora of other things. But I think there's some buts in there. Like I'll explain that later. But
alright, so we'll get into the butt before we get into the example. Some buts that take place and should Christians protect in Black Lives Matter is, are we now questioning God's plan or questioning the faith? Because, for example, if we say we believe that everything happens for a reason, then if a particular action takes place in the world, is that not a part of God's plan? What should we do to correct it? Are we working in the world as Christians in Black Lives Matter, or are we not? What do you think? Is that questioning God's overall plan?
No, I don't think it does at all. Biggest example for me is there's certain liberties that I'm enjoying now as a young Black woman that somebody had to fight for. And so the civil rights movement came on the back of all the injustice that people who look like me were facing some 50, 60 years ago. And what they were experiencing was not God's plan. But I will say, as a Christian, men are always to pray, not to faint, I'm praying. I say my but because I believe that the Black Lives Matter could be, as a Christian, a part of the action that I'm doing behind my prayer, depending on what my stance is in the matter. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of Christians who are part of the civil rights movement. I think there's always this parallel between the civil rights and the Black Lives Matter. I think the difference is media, time, social media. There's so many different factors. But I believe that that's not God's. A lot of the injustices that are going around are not necessarily God's plan, but they are the products or the byproduct of a system of oppression.
Mhm.
And some people feel that I'm an innocent bystander or I'm a person who's going to do something about it. I believe that some Christians, myself included, would take a stance of why not be a part of something that could lead to change. And that's the motive I think that Christians see. That's my opinion. I think they're looking for the change motive. You know, what the injustices going against certain black men or certain people being killed because of the color of their skin, or not getting a fair share of trial, or not certain things not happening properly because of the color of their skin. Maybe we can change that with this movement. I think that's what inspires people to want to be a part of this. It's taken a life of its own, but I think that was the initial motive.
Trey, what you think?
So I think I want to piggyback on what I think. My concern is the life of its own that it's taken. And the reality is this. It's like we said, hey, I remember when I was a kid looking at Rodney King on TV. You know, so you think about it. How long has this been going on? So now in this millennial world, everybody's snapping, tweeting, taking a video of something. So now it's accessible. You know, you see it constantly. I can say I grew up in my time. It was the norm. You know, you didn't have people speaking up because that was the reality. That's how the communities were. That's the Brooklyn in the 80s. Like crack infested, it wasn't, you know, it wasn't cupcakes. It was, you know, cops were doing whatever they wanted to do. And now, you know, that this generation is seeing it constantly. They're like, oh my God, Black lives. You know, so the question at hand is not about, okay, Black lives do matter, obviously, because we have been struggling and fighting, and we're still caught up in this systemic. Like I look at the industry of music and just how we're portrayed on television, I don't see anything positive
being flown out,
as being a person of color. And the reason why I say just of color, because it's beyond just black, it's Hispanics. You know, and it's just any other race. It's sometimes, and that's what to me, I'm like, okay, it is Black Lives Matter, because it's hard to be a black man.
Yes.
It is extremely hard. You know, as you guys mature and you get older, you'll find it's like a different level. And then the black women, I fear for my daughter, because it's like how black men are perceived. You know, objects. And I ride the train and I'm looking at these young black kids. I'm like, oh, I need to drop the word, because people say we want change, but then you look at the way people carry themselves. Black people carry themselves. I watch white folks curl their lips up on the train, and I'm just like, well, I watch old black women, when young black men, they cussing for 45 minutes for no reason. So you're telling me Black Lives Matter, but I think, you know, we have to start figuring out in our homes, in our communities, how do we change this discomfort? It relates to alcoholism. How do we get the liquor stores out of our community? How do we remove certain things from our community? Because that's what it really is. If being, I won't say ignorant, but being ignorant, taking in constant negative feeds from television and your music, then how are we supposed to change? How are we going to make that change? I'm being honest, and then you look at white America taking it in, but guess what? They have a switch. And then when we sometimes as black people go over and say, I don't want to be ignorant, oh, she's too white. What does that mean? Like, I'm confused. So once again, it's us being ourselves. When people say Black Lives Matter, my question is, what are we doing in our homes? What are we doing in our communities? You know, are we really going out, talking to the cops? You know, I get it.
So then, is there, just tying back to like this Christian walk that we live in, is there a limit to what we can do? Because like there's groups involved in like community policing and things that we can do, but is there a limit in terms of us being as Christian and still doing things for like how to help like black communities? Is there a limit in being part of the Black Lives Movement?
I don't think so, but I think the most important thing you said is there's a disparity, because I think if I'm a person of another race, we're saying, how can Black Lives Matter? And I've heard this argument so many times, Black Lives Matter, but look at your communities. Black Lives Matter. So are we fighting, is Black Lives Matter, is the root of it the injustice that people are facing, or is the root of it really what's really going on in our black communities without any type of police brutality or any type of, wrongful death by the hands of somebody who's not black? A lot of white people and non-black people say, well, how can Black Lives Matter be legit if black people are killing black people? And I always say, well, white people kill white people, and Spanish people kill people, but the media projection or the portrayal of how we are, and many of us in our own communities see ignorance and see things being portrayed. So I think as a Christian, it just puts me. Sometimes I try not to think too deep into it, because when I do that, there becomes this discouragement. Because it's like, well, what side do I fall on? Am I on the injustice side, where I should be marching in the streets for this injustice going on towards this black man who was killed by this white guy, he didn't do anything, and Trayvon Martin didn't do anything, versus look how my people are treating each other in our communities. Is this the real Black Lives Matter movement? Like, where does this movement start? As a Christian, I struggle with that sometimes. I don't even want to think about it if I be transparent, because I feel a conviction within inside of me, because a lot of the things that should have really led to the Black Lives Matter movement, I've been seeing it since I was J High, and there was nothing to be done about it, and nobody was ever going to do anything about it. Now some white man or somebody who's non-black comes and shoots you, we all scream, hands up, oh God, don't shoot, don't do this, don't do that. I mean,
so that's one thing that you said is important, is the side that you fall on. And this is actually getting to like my own discrepancies. Like, to keep it 100, I literally feel like I'm on two sides.
Yeah.
You have like the Christian walk, and then you have the Black Lives Matter walk.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say it's starting to split is once again, how media portrays the Black Lives movement, which all the negative stuff, which is a lot of it is false anyways. But exactly where is the direction of this going in the Black Lives movement, and where God is taking me go? Like, how can we? I'm trying to get to the point where blending of the two. Like, how can I still help my brothers and sisters, but still encourage them to trust God? Because, like, for example, the reason why I say that, and we're talking about just like black and white, for example, a lot of young black people will say, "Oh, Jesus is a white man God."
Mm-hmm.
So when you bring that into it and bring race into it, and it goes back to like slavery, and people say, "Oh, slavery was brought from the Bible, that's white man's God," and stuff like that. How can I effectively reach my brothers and sisters who do not believe in Jesus Christ and still be part of their movement?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think this goes back to a calling and this praying to see what God led you to do, because there's, as you said, there's plenty of Christian black leaders and stuff like that. But I feel like that's the innate in them and what God told them to do. But that's where my like land sound like, is that drawing a sign? What was that? Sign drum? Something like that?
Jump in or whatever. So
But yeah.
I guess
My split pretty much.
part of it does align with our faith, because ultimately it's a leader, helping people that are in captive, currently, like Moses freeing his people, so that's my analogy for it. So right now we are captors. In this reality, we're captors, and we have, and this is what I said. I think I said this for a couple of years. I'm pissing people off. I haven't seen a black leader since MLK. And I'm saying Obama was not a black leader; he was the black president.
100%.
So we, as people of color, we are looking, and I don't say look. I think there's a need for a black leader to step forth, and I think in line with Christianity, I think it's important for us to be out there to support. We're talking about physical and spiritual, because sometimes you can be in a room with a group of enemies, and you may have a calming spirit. Mm-hmm. Some people have that presence, that aura. Mm-hmm. So if you have a group of Christians that are blessed and have this gift within that group, you don't know the power that you may have. So I think it is critical that we as Christians are out there. I agree to disagree with the Black Lives Matter, but I think that we can't always as Christians go, well, I'm lukewarm, and I get it, because it's the struggle. Yeah. Either you're gonna go in there, give it all, but know where you stand. Okay, when it comes to God, and God will guide you always. So that's why I do as I say, but God's always. I think that's what I'm learning now. As I'm getting older, it's like you can go hard, but then just like how you said, when you had that moment when God was like, you can't, doesn't matter. So I think it's similar, because we were like you're lukewarm. So it's just like that's one of the issues that people may have with Christians or Christians. You're a Christian. You're supposed to say, where are you guys? Mm-hmm. As to being in a bar or being anywhere.
And that's
everywhere.
Stop you real quick right there. That's one thing that's impactful to me, is where are the Christians in this Black Lives movement? Because, for example, it's like they're being hidden in the crowd. Like for example, I'll say myself first. I go to a whole bunch of Black Lives, like marches and movements and stuff like that. But it's never feel like a presence, or like I'm a Black Lives Matter supporter and I'm a Christian. It's always separate. And I feel like there's leaders that were like, oh, black power, black this, but never say, I believe in Jesus Christ.
I think because there's also this expectancy that if you are pro-Christian, you are pro-life, and if you are pro-life, then you are pro-injustice. So it's one of those things that don't necessarily, or it's perpetuated that it doesn't have to be said that, well, if I'm a Christian, you're not expecting, or I'm not going to say this. This is just my opinion. I'm not going to say that this is the thought process, but you wouldn't necessarily say that a Christian, or you'd be surprised that the Christian's like, well, I'm against the Black Lives Matter movement. Until they open their mouth and they tell you the reasons why, because I think that it has also taken a life of its own. I think it's become very social media trendy. I remember when I graduated college, about 6 years ago, and I remember this was right around the time when some of those injustices started happening. Even after I graduated, I think Trayvon Martin had gotten shot. And I remember everybody walking around campus, and then Mike Brown got shot like a year later, he got killed. And I saw like a lot of college kids that I was still connected with, everybody was taking the hands up, don't shoot photo. And some people didn't even know like the real, I would say the real deal behind a lot of these things, but it just became trendy to be a part of something. Yeah. And I think a lot of these young kids, it's just trendy to be a part of it. And just like being a Christian, and some people living on the surface and they don't have that deep communication, and we don't have the official Black leader, so many things get so caught up and lost that as a Christian, I kind of lose my taste. This is why I become lukewarm, because it kind of takes the taste out of my mouth. Number one, I don't know where I stand. There's just so many opposing factors that make the Black Lives Matter movement so murky and muddy and blurry that the lines do become blurred. As a Christian, where do I stand? But do I have to say I'm a Christian? Do I have to
put
like? Do I have to be like I'm? Does it have to be Christian? The sign marching on the street, Christians or BLM? Christians stand for the Black Lives Matter.
It's so true.
Like, do we have to?
Everything's murky. I'm like, oh man, I don't feel like we have to, but I feel like if we're as Christians, if we're doing like a serious impact or a sublet of the Black Lives Matter movement, this has to be something that still draws people to Christ. Like, there's injustices in the world. I'm like, yes, we should do everything we can for our brothers and sisters, like doing like support groups, everything we can. But then, what is the ultimate goal? Because like we're fishers of men. What is the ultimate goal with that? Like, where's the end of it?
So I'm gonna ask you a question then. So, in conversing or trying to make a change, do you have to go, hey, what's up? I'm a Christian. By the way, so when does that become a prerequisite?
I mean, no.
You can do Black Lives Matter, but I'm saying,
I understand what I'm talking about.
my actions should.
I'm talking about the end goal. I'm not talking about the pre. The pre is like, if I'm being somebody, I'm not gonna say like, hey, no, I'm a Christian. No, I'm talking about I'm a person. But at the end of it, what am I doing to impact your life through Christ? Because no matter what, if I do nothing to say to him that to lead him to Christ, he is still going to hell, whether he's black, white,
right.
I think
so. I'm not going to approach myself in a negative way, saying that I'm a Christian. I'm a Christian. I'm going to do everything I can to be a black person.
But then when
there has to be a goal.
But when you engage with a person, you know that from.
I mean, but that's not. I'm not talking about the engagement part.
But you're saying fine. But even if you're in a crowd, you still have to have a one-on-one conversation.
Yeah, and that's the prerequisite. The pre of, like, for example, if I meet somebody on Monday, I'm not going to say automatically I'm a Christian. I'm going to do everything I can to help them. I guess still talking about Black Lives Matter. How can we help as black people to come together? But as days goes on and weeks goes on and months goes on, if I'm saying nothing to him to bring him to Christ, then I'm still failing God and failing God's mission.
I agree. I would also say that nobody really. I don't think anybody expected Christians to come with the label. And I'm kind of agreeing with you. It was like we are the supporters. We were just supposed to lend a helping hand and be there marching with our brothers and sisters. Like, the question that you're asking, I think it's an important question. Like, where do you stand as a Christian, or how does your involvement in this bring somebody to Christ? How are you still glorifying God? Because everything we're doing is supposed to glorify God, but I don't think anybody expected the Christians to have a say or a stance in this. It's just either you're on the side of agreeing with it, or you don't agree. You're supporting. You're like the person who was marching at the AIDS walk who doesn't have AIDS, who just wants to show your support. Yeah. You're the person at the breast cancer walk who doesn't have breast cancer. You just want, I'm here to march and support. I don't necessarily have a face, or I don't necessarily have an identity in this, but as a Christian, so to speak, or, as a person who loves God, God loves all people. It's one of those if and then, or cause and effect. Because I love God, because I am a Christian, I should care about all people. Because I care about all people, I should care about injustice. Because I care about injustice, I should march, and I should support, and I should do what I can. But nobody's ever said, where does your relationship with God stand in this? As a Christian, where do you stand as a Christian in the Black Lives Matter movement? Do you take off the Christian cloak
That's what I'm saying.
and then walk and march and then put it back on? You know what I'm saying? Or,
And I think that's the turmoil, because I feel like in society, I feel like we have to take off that armor and support the Black Lives Matter.
But
Well,
who says
why is it taking off armor?
that's what I was listening. Who said?
I mean, just
it-
example. Like you gotta strip your faith, or say like I'm not a Christian. I mean, but I'm not saying it does it for me, but that's kind of like how I perceive.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like even in other things in our lives, sometimes I think because too the negative the negative viewpoint of how Christians are portrayed sometimes, especially like with the Black Lives Matter movement, I've come across a lot of radical people, a lot of people who are like, you know what, I'm not going to believe that religious propaganda and all that stuff. A lot of, the term woke, that's really associated with the Black Lives Matter movement. I still don't know what that means. I don't know what it means, but all these things are happening. Sometimes we feel, I can personally say that I felt at one point or another that I've had to take off my Christian cloak and be like, well, if I come in here with the I love Jesus shirt and all this, and I love Jesus, maybe this person won't, gravitate to me. So let me take this off for a second, put it down, I come in peace, let me talk to you, show you that I'm cool. You ever had I use Ebonics, I talk, what's up, what's good, what's up, it's lit, hey, I'm with you, I'm on your team. And then when they get to know me, now I can kind of ease into it. When honestly, I'm not saying it should be like that. Like, we should be able to freely come and say, I love Jesus, but it comes with so much because Christians have already been portrayed or been given this look or this stance or this stigma or this taboo thing that you can't always do that. So sometimes you might have to, it might feel like you're putting down the cloak to embrace the Black Lives Matter movement or talk to somebody relating to the Black Lives Matter movement.
I just think you have to keep it on. I mean, to be honest with you, you just approach it a different way because that's where you need your armor more than anything.
More than anything.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because you're adjusting to the norms of society.
Mm-hmm.
Where then you need to keep it on more than ever you praying. But like you're right, you don't have to approach it a certain way. But I think that in a sense is where you need God more than ever to intervene. To be mindful of the way you interact. He will make you say what he needs you to say. So once again, it's just making God that mouthpiece, and he's doing what he has to do. So I mean, you really need that cloak. I think we try to conform to society, but instead of conforming to society, and I tell you, just from living life and conforming numerous times, that God is so awesome that no matter the situation, he always got your back. So you don't have to uncloak anything.
You don't.
People gonna know who you are because you are a shining light. So
how you carry yourself.
Yeah.
So one last thing I want to talk about in terms of, now we're talking about the church specifically. So keep it like within the church. Does the Black Lives Movement cause a separation within the church? And what I mean by that is, let's say we have a church of a whole bunch of races, and we have a pastor that's supporting Black Lives Matter, and one gets members and the congregation on board. Does that cause a rift? Because as a white person or somebody else was like, I don't want to touch that topic because I feel like I'm not wanted.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
How can pastors or do you feel like does it separate members of the church?
I mean, it might. I think it may determine the age group. But I think one thing we talk about taboo is that you need to have open lines of communication. You agree to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in church, because I think for me, one fundamental principle: if I can't be me in church, then where in the world can I ever be you?
Right.
Nowhere, bro.
If I could be, if you think about it, if you can't be you in church and you're a Christian, who are you really?
Yeah.
Not a Christian. Yeah.
That's a good point. Like I feel like you said exactly. I feel like just be who you are. But like as a pastor, saying that I support the Black Lives Matter shouldn't dictate. Like if God told the pastor to talk about this issue in church, then you should talk about that issue in church. And like you can't. I truly believe like this is a topic. Actually, this is a topic. But I truly believe as a pastor, you shouldn't let other people stop you from what God is telling you to do, being members of the church or not. Because I ultimately, as a pastor, you're responsible for these people's souls. So if God is telling you to do something, then there's souls that need to be won by you doing that. So that's you being disobedient to God. Now I feel like there's ways to get everybody involved from different races to support and be part of this movement, being like God's oriented first, I would say, so everybody doesn't feel like, oh, this is just a black thing. But I feel like you should do it no matter what in the church, or at least have a dialogue, at least have opportunity where we could talk about it. Because as you said, if I can't come to church and be myself, and if I can't come to church and have these topics here, then you want me to go out in the world and do it? Because that's not going to save me.
And I think it should also be in a diverse setting also. I think you need to have open dialogue and gain perspective from another person that's another color and race. Because I've had those conversations. And, you'll be surprised when you share a situation with them that they're so taken in because they've never experienced. So I think, in essence, if you do it in a church environment, try to get an affiliate to come in, various races, and then maybe one or two people outside of church, because I think it's very important, once again, to have diversity so people can share their experience and then share, this is why I don't agree.
Yeah.
So it's not, I'm yelling, we're just having an open conversation. This is why I don't agree with Black Lives Matter. This is why I agree. And I think that's one of the issues that I have, with that conversation in church enough, because it's not an open dialogue. It's one black person talking to the next black person. And you're like, yeah, that's right, dog. So how can someone understand how you feel if they've never sat in an environment, especially in church, that may have never gone through that, may never understand it, So that's just my take on it.
Yeah. So Black Lives Matter. I support it. Do you? No.
That was so corny.
No,
I like it.
I was right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so that's it for today's episode. Follow us at Misfits Arise on Facebook and Instagram. See you guys next week. Take care.